So this is what annual ryegrass, the cereal grain, looks like if you add it into a seed mix. We're here today to evaluate whether or not this technique makes sense here in the Mid-Atlantic. I'll go through some of the reasons why it's a widely used and acceptable and logical technique in dry croplands or prairies, not meadows, and that's because of the soil moisture retaining capabilities of a cover crop. The mechanisms are several. The first thing it does is it creates a little bit of shade. It raises the canopy cover reading on a newly seeded meadow from 0% or nearly so to maybe 20%. Well, ecologically that makes a big difference in terms of measurable soil moisture in the seed germination and early rooting zone. So that's positive. The other thing it does is these tall cereals, they reduce wind speed velocities at the surface of which also helps to preserve soil moisture. So that also is a very good thing. And if planted at a proper density, which this one wasn't, you can see the rows in there. So they were planted with a drill seeder instead of a broadcast seeder. The other potential benefit of introducing a cereal is its ability to act as mulch once mown. So sort of like what you see off in the distance and a little bit here. Now, those are, incredibly important, almost crucial attributes or reasons why a cereal cover crop in dryland prairies is so important. But we're in the Mid-Atlantic. It rains every other day. It's cloudy. We don't have the wind. We have trees and shrubs and tons of weeds. So the question is given all the other vegetation, right, which you can see here, which is almost always and ever present in our meadows, whether it's native perennials that were allowed to remain, like these warm-season grasses here by Antipogon, or goldenrods, or just nuisance annual weeds like Jimson weed and ragweed and whatnot. Does the addition of a cereal rye or a cereal anything and the expense of mowing it all down multiple times, which is the normal practice, does that make sense? Is that the right economic and ecological decision for a new meadow system in the Mid-Atlantic or in the Northeast for that matter? And if you just look at this particular meadow situation, there is ample vegetation already in place that is reducing wind speeds, casting shade, and therefore acting as living mulch instead of dead, thick stems of mulch. So, based on this example alone, no, the addition of a cereal rye makes no sense. And the cost and time associated with mowing it like that is really hard to defend. So importing a Midwestern dryland prairie technique into moist if not wet Mid-Atlantic meadow systems is a bit misplaced, to say the least, and would encourage meadow practitioners to adhere to the goals of using a cover crop, right? Casting shade, reducing wind speed at the surface of the soil, providing a little bit of mulch. Those are all valid, but there's got to be a better way to do that without using this non-native cereal that just needs mowing. Now, does it actually need mowing? That's a really good question. The assumption is that once it achieves a certain height, boy, you better hurry up and start to mow it. But if you actually look at the density of the grass compared to, the surface of what's underneath, here, let's look at that together. The role of the ryegrass in this meadow is basically insignificant. It is contributing what it can contribute, but there's absolutely no ecological reason why this rye has to be mown. Now, Will the rye drop seed and become significantly more dense next year? That is a possibility, but these grains have been sown in this region for a very long time, and never have I seen them reseed so abundantly that they've become a problem. Those seeds have a difficult time surviving the ecological conditions present in most mid-Atlantic meadow systems. So fine, we planted the cereal rye. It's providing some very marginal benefit. Is there a different way to provide those benefits without investing in a non-native crop and then investing in multiple mowings? Yes, there is, obviously. It's sort of a rhetorical question. But your meadow designers and your project managers, those that are speccing meadow systems like this, need to think a little bit more deeply about what they're trying to achieve with their meadows and employ appropriate mid-Atlantic and Northeast techniques rather than just importing something. Yeah, you can see that the density of the cereal rye just isn't enough to have any appreciable effect, on the seed bed at all. In the mid-Atlantic, at least in this particular spot where there's already, an extensive native vegetation system, these warm season grasses, that the addition of the cereal rye was just straight up a waste of equipment, time. So unless there's a compelling reason to use a cover crop in your new meadow, just don't do it. We don't use them hardly at all in our normal standard practice, although as I described previously, a dryland system, a cover crop can provide valuable services that you can't get otherwise. So that's what a skip looks like. This is actually a great spot because it shows what the vegetation is already on the ground, without the cereal rye. And it's perfectly adequate as, for the purposes of germinating seeds, and you don't have to mow it. So the addition of the rye in this scenario in particular was absolutely not required. In most meadow systems on the East Coast, this is what we find, particularly at higher latitudes like in northern Pennsylvania, into New York and Connecticut, the upper half of New Jersey, eastern Ohio, everywhere in West Virginia. In the mid-Atlantic, we just have so much rain and so much cloud cover and low-speed winds, plenty of native and non-native vegetation already in our meadow systems that the addition of these resource-consuming cereal cover crops is just unwarranted. Here's another little cedar skip. It looks like three tubes got clogged here. That's normal. It happens. It's not a big deal. But you can see how there wasn't any cereal rye dropped in these 3 rows. And what was the negative effect on not having that cover crop in the system? None, because you already had a cover crop, a native cover crop that doesn't need mowing, which contributes directly to habitat quality. This meadow did not need this cereal cover, nor did it need the wasteful resources being spent on mowing it all down and just creating this barren system that you see here. Here's your naturally occurring cover crop in this meadow. Almost certainly Andropogon virginicus. I saw a little bit of little blue stem, not much. Milkweeds, big patch of posonum, wherever you like to say it. I mean, this system already had a cover crop. All right, yeah, so you can see how all these plant parts get stuck in the grill, and I can't wait to see what the radiator looks like inside, but my guess is, so again, you have to stick a little stick in that hole right there. Nice plastic lid, it's super light. Yeah, I don't know if you can see, but yeah, the main radiator is all plugged up. All right, let's see what it looks like when you blow. It's gonna be loud, hold your ears. Oh yeah, look at that. Whoa! Right, looking good. So that's how you clean the radiators. Remember, no sticks, no wire, no screwdrivers. Just a nice handy blower that you can keep in the cab with you. So the goal here is to knock down the cover crop. All right, so we're going to adjust the height of the mower deck to protect the pre-existing warm season grass is present already in the meadow. Set the mower deck at 7 inches. The blades are 1 inch up from the bottom of the deck. And the idler wheel is now resting on the ground, holding the mower deck flat. And we're getting effective mow on the cereal grain, and we're not impacting the warm season grasses. See that down here? The warm season grasses are fine. Maybe getting a little bit of a haircut, but they're not being mown. And the other little annual weeds are not being mown either because they're too small. So I'm going to adjust it a little bit lower. Alright, so what we just did was adjusted the idler wheel, which is in the back of the mower here, so that the mower deck was leaning from the back of the tractor down to the ground on a diagonal, and that's not ideal. And the wheel was dangling in the air, which just puts unnecessary stress on the hitch and on the tractor. So what we did is we lowered the idler wheel, so the bolt was there. So we took the bolt out, dropped the idler wheel, which this whole A-frame arm dropped down, and then we reattached it here. All right, so that's generally how you adjust the idler wheel on the mower so that you can have a flat mower without putting stress on your 3-point hitch. All right. Here's what the vegetation looks like when mown or at the 6 to 8 inch level, more 8 than 6, but the ground's bumpy. And you can see that the native warm season grasses are barely touched, so they're still casting tons of shade. The root crowns aren't damaged. Yeah, it's a much better result. So if you're mowing a meadow with a lot of warm season grasses, anthropogons, ligastrum, tridents, schizocranium even, although that doesn't go around here much. Yeah, keep the mower deck high at that 8 inches. You're gonna be happy that you did. And when you burn down the edge of a meadow to control for olive and honeysuckle and whatnot, in case you haven't seen it before, this is what it looks like. Generally the most seed productive or seed producing specimens of these invasives are on the edge. So by spraying about 8 to 10 feet into the woods, you're actually taking a substantial bite out of the invasive shrub seed production capability of the area. Now, will it prevent invasive shrubs from getting in the meadow? No, but it greatly reduces their incidence, at least in the short term. Ideally, the landowner or another grantor would fund pushing into the system a little bit further. Like there's a white mulberry, which very rapidly invade this meadow. But that's a lot of dead shrubs, and it will have a very noticeable, immediate, positive impact on the meadow system. It won't last unless you keep going over time, but that's a really great start, and that's what it looks like.